Hello everyone and welcome to the SwiftCase Productivity Platform podcast. I'm here today with Phil and Craig from SwiftCase team. My name is Adam Sykes, I'm the tech founder behind SwiftCase, the productivity platform.
Yeah, I'm Phil, I'm a developer at SwiftCase.
And hi, I'm Craig, I'm development manager in our Liverpool office for SwiftCase.
Okay, great. So today we're going to have a little talk about automation. So our business, we often talk about automation, how we automate people's businesses, and people often get confused about what it means. And it's been in the news a lot recently about what the future holds for automation, and is there going to be a rise of the robots and various other ideas around that. So we're just going to explore a couple of the various different aspects about what's the future hold for automation, what will the world of work look like in the future, how's it going to impact on other areas of daily life, and also bringing it back around to how can you use automation today in your business to make your business more productive. I think that's really a good summary of what we're gonna have a talk about today. Okay, great. So why don't we kick off with I suppose, what is automation? Does anyone want to get the ball rolling on?
I mean, to sum it up, it's taking a task that we do manually and processing it via a machine or in any other way to kind of take, the manual labour out of it, really.
Yeah, so I think very much if you go back to like the Industrial Revolution, when machines came in to automate tasks that were previously done by hand, this is just kind of what we do is the next step. So things which require a bit more thought can be automated if they're a repetitive task, if it's some kind of admin work or even understanding data and how that works and basically making that happen in a more efficient process, I suppose, is automation. It's not anything really that complicated. It's something you do, a step-by-step process that can be done by a computer or indeed in a factory, like a car factory, still by a real-life robot, as most people would think of a robot.
Yeah. So I think it's just now we think about a long chain of events rather than a single human event, or like just stacking something.
Yeah.
We now sort of like deal in, what would be a long, arduous, day-long process of constructing documents and contacting people and making reminders and all these things. So our sort of business sort of takes all that and automates it.
Yeah.
Rather than, some people might have this perception of it of robots being these big mechanical arms that sort of press buttons. It's not like replacing a human with a big mechanical arm that types out a document. It all happens in the computer, and that's still a robot. Yeah, isn't it? I
think that's a key thing. When we talk about robots, we're talking about software, we're talking about AI, but as well, it also means the actual physical robots, like I said, like you'd get in a car factory that's putting the door across from the machine that's just pressed it, and so on. So there's lots of different types of robots. It all comes under one big thing, and even your things like the Alexa and your Google voice activated products, Siri, they're all robots. Exactly. So something which that's basically using like natural language processing. So it's taking the sentence structure, it's recognizing the voice, and it's interpreting that into a command that a computer can understand, and then it activates that. It's all part of the same sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's all part of doing things that humans have done and getting them to be done by machines.
I think there's a traditional view of automation being that the house, especially from the 50s, would be full of robots doing all these tasks. So there'd be like an android humanoid that would be vacuuming, right? And like a humanoid android that would be cooking. And I think a lot of the kind of negativity about it was that these were inhuman, sort of uncanny valley things that people should be scared of. Yeah. And what's actually happened is this invisible thing has happened instead, where your fridge can monitor your food and make orders if it wants to. Yeah.
We're not talking about the Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like, when you say automation and all this and robots, I think that it's all changed massively, isn't it?
Yeah. There are lots of negative connotations, and I suppose as well as that, you come on to I suppose, the future of work and what jobs will be around in the future, and how's automation going to affect people's livelihoods is a big topic. So I mean, we often have issues where people think we're going to come in and automate their business, that we're going to get rid of some of their staff, and you know, that's not the case. That's not what we're about. I suppose what we always see it is a way that how can we make people's work more meaningful and free them up to do tasks that aren't repetitive. You know, so whether that means that someone's currently working on an admin job, and actually now they can become more customer facing and actually speak to more people. So rather than just entering the data about booking a appointment with someone, they can actually spend more time speaking on the phone with people, or dealing with people who are having problems, or you know, actually putting together a much better service. And I suppose that also happened in the past. So when barcode scanners first came in, you know, so everyone was worried that all the cashiers were going to lose their jobs because, you know, lots of people could do things a lot quicker, so we didn't need as many cashiers. But actually what the evidence showed is the volume of things that people were buying increased. So actually we needed more cashiers. So actually it created jobs of the very type of jobs that people were worried about losing. So I think we find that for some of our businesses is actually what happens is not that they don't need to do the same volume of work. They do it much more efficiently, so they don't need as many staff. Actually what happens is the volume increases because they can do much more work because it's a much more efficient process. And now actually those staff are doing more of the high level stuff across a greater volume. But I think, you know, there will be a change to the world of work, won't there? So I mean, people say there's going to be a change of types of jobs people doing. What's everyone sort of think jobs will be like in the future? Which jobs are going to go? Which ones are going to stay?
I mean, I think it's more the emotional driven jobs. There's probably going to be a lot more of it. I mean, speaking about some of the customers that we've dealt with in the past, one of the real joys I get out of doing what I do, which is going to businesses and seeing ways that we can potentially automate their processes, is when we've got potential clients who are working out of hours to try and get all the work done because they can't get it done during the day. They're updating 4 or 5 different spreadsheets when realistically they could consolidate that into one process, and they could then automate all the admin work attached to it, like sending out emails, you know, producing a document that they're sending every time. So yeah, just seeing that turn around and giving them a bit more time so they can deal with the customer or focus on the things they enjoy doing at work more. You know, they can potentially customize that work a little bit more. So I don't know, they're putting a bit more of their personality in rather than just entering data constantly. And
so one of the big jobs that's probably going to be reducing certainly is things like data entry. So anything that's repetitive, you're going to think that's really going to start being phased out over time, and anything where it's quite straightforward to just take some information and put it into another format, that can be automated. So that's going to go. Whereas I suppose what you're saying is that anything where you need face-to-face interaction, that's going to increase. So any jobs where face-to-face is involved and people want to speak to someone, they don't want to speak to a robot. So you don't want to go into a restaurant and just see a vending machine. There are vending machines, people buy from vending machines, but we don't only do that. We go out for an experience. We want to speak to the waiter or the waitress. We want to see like an interaction between people while we're out there. We don't want to just go and pick off an iPad and have a robot deliver it to our table. There is a concept. We've seen concept restaurants that do that, but ultimately you go for the experience, don't you? And I suppose
it's very similar to some of the retail stores you see, and even banks as well at the moment. I know I recently upgraded my phone, and I just wanted to talk to somebody about what phone I should get. So I go into one of the stores and I sat down and had a big chat about my contract, maybe things that they could do. But ultimately, they didn't have the phone stocked in the store. It was purely customer service, and that's what I was going in there for. They ordered the phone for me, and it was the equivalent of ordering online. But I'm dealing with a person face to face.
Because if it was a computer would just give you either they could talk you through it, the various comparisons, I suppose. But at the moment, we haven't really got much further than that. I don't know whether I suppose in the future you could imagine that a computer could interact with you and answer your questions like Alexa can.
Well, through machine learning.
Machine learning and knowledge of the data set. But I suppose what you're saying is, for certain things, would you want to? Like maybe for a phone in the future you may want to, but let's say it's like your health or
taking out a mortgage,
something that's a big life decision. Do you want a bit more
I don't think I
interaction?
When I took my mortgage, I think it was literally just done.
Yeah.
Or automatically, and when I get my car insurance, it's done automatically.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, you're saying about restaurants and having this human interaction. I think we could have said the same thing about supermarkets and things like that. But in reality, with Amazon and 1 hour delivery and things like that, are we really going to retain that, except for like maybe corner shop experiences? Is the supermarket really going to survive?
I don't know. I think the supermarket's different because you go to a supermarket, don't you, because you want something.
Yeah, you don't want a human interaction.
You don't want a human interaction, do you? You want to get. Well, I certainly do. I want to get in.
But some people do.
Get my stuff and get out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And the machine's going wrong and having to rely on a human to come and say, you're allowed to put that on the scale.
Yeah.
That's an interruption to my day. I don't want that interruption. I want the machine to just work, and that's better programming and other options. But I think that is different to a restaurant. I suppose like restaurants, if you take it one step further, you think about a doctor. Like if you've got bad news coming, do you want it to come in an email or Alexa or another voice to tell you that some bad news?
That emotional aspect again, though, isn't it? Really, it's where do you want something that's just black or white?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be able to talk to someone about something? And I don't think a robot can give you that emotion.
No. And I think even if it did have nuances and it had different language, I know it's hard to put yourself in 100 years time when things moved on, because there'd be a slow progress towards that. And maybe 20 years ago we didn't think we'd be going in and scanning our own shopping and putting it in ourselves and not talking to someone in the shop. But I think you're right. I think there are decisions that you just wouldn't want a robot involved in. You kind of need that nuance, and you kind of need someone to think outside of the box sometimes, don't you? So say, I don't know, for example, let's say it's the legal system and for some reason someone's in court and the decision's going to be made of whether they're guilty or not guilty. Now sometimes that's not down to an exact set of rules as such, because there's always leeway in court decisions, isn't there? There's always a bit of maybe the sentence shouldn't be X because they've got this sort of background or they're very remorseful or there's certain extenuating circumstances.
Can a machine show empathy?
Like the insurer, but then maybe the problem is one of the issues with what you're saying, like adjudication, is that there's so many biases and in there that it might favour people that are historically suffer from bias. So any racial bias from a judge, or ostensibly white and conservative and old. So it may in the end be fairer with a good AI making the decision, rather than going, I don't like the way he walked up to I don't like the way he talked to me, so I'm going to give him an extra 3 years, which we've seen that sort of
the system can be manipulated to no end, really.
When you've got power, it gets abused, and that's true whether you're a judge or a bot of Facebook.
It's true. You made a good point there, though, that the way that these machines learn is from a data set, isn't it? So they've got to get their data from somewhere, and if they learn from past historical data, then if that's got biases in, then those biases are just going to get baked
that's
in.
Exactly right.
And I think there's been something recently where there was, I don't know, it was a news story creator or it created some kind of content, and it was withdrawn because basically it was making content that you wouldn't want to be created.
Was it the Microsoft Twitter bot?
Possibly,
It started saying stuff.
It started saying stuff that was
anti-Semitic,
or there was various issues with it because it had been built up over a data set that
people realised how they could game it by entering certain data. That is if you can understand the rules by it works, it's very easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
Play the system.
So I think that would probably be another area of future jobs, if you like, would be actually oversight of these systems, having a human oversight to like not let these things get away. So increase security. Also, there's the question of ethics, isn't there? I think it's kind of a boundary as well to some of this actually happening, is that because these types of algorithms require such large data sets, and we've already seen recently with GDPR regulations that people don't want to share their data. You know, the Facebook advertising scandals across the Brexit vote and also in US elections. We've seen that people didn't realise that all this data was out there that was then making decisions about them, and they didn't like it. And now people are thinking about reining in some of this privacy, and certainly rules that have been put in place through GDPR certainly are about restricting this. And if the data set's restricted, it's hard for the machine learning algorithms to actually progress.
That's a good point, but if it only has to be better than humans, doesn't it? So if I was making a judgment about, or you making a judgment about employing someone, you may only have experience of having a certain number of employees in the past. So you may be comparing them subconsciously to people that you've met before. I don't like this person. With a computer or a program, we're talking about tens of thousands, if not millions, of judgments, even with a limited data set maybe. So even when people have opted out,
That's true.
So it only has to be better than an individual poorly configured human with very limited experience.
But I think that misses a key point of hiring someone. I mean, certainly the way I hire someone, you can teach people skills, you can teach people knowledge, but the passion and like there's almost like an unconscious and like, not attraction, I suppose is the wrong word, but like there's an unconscious decision, like a gut decision that that person's got, like you can trust them. There's the body language and so on.
Definitely.
Have they lied on their CV? When you start asking them questions, they might give answers, but do they sound hesitant? There's lots of factors that you could eventually build up a data set big enough for robots to actually understand that. But that's a long way off. Just going off
doesn't matter how long off it is.
Just going off a CV. And making a snap decision that they've hit these targets.
It doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
It would have to be.
I think it could be good for
I think
an initial stage. For example, if you kind of think of it, okay, let's go from stage 1 to stage 2. For an interview process, I suppose you could automate candidates
We've got initial
out.
sift, and I think we have. That already exists. Doesn't it? There are ways to sift CVs too, and indeed, like when you actually search for CVs, you can filter people's CVs. That was a free plug for Indeed. Other recruitment companies are available as long as they don't ring us. Right. I suppose if we think like anything that requires empathy, judgment, I think one of the key things I always think is like anything that requires creative thinking, creativity. So it's going to be very hard to automate art, books, music.
I don't know if you've
even
read
software.
any of the poetry written by robots.
No, I'm not a big poetry fan.
I haven't got any on hand, but it's worth googling. It's pretty crap.
All right, I've got a question for you. I've just thought of something. There was a study a while ago where people said the same thing about violins, right? So you've got a Stradivarius violin, and that people would say I prefer the sound of a Stradivarius violin compared to a modern violin made with modern materials and the best technology available. People would have a very definite opinion about this. They'd say, I can tell. Right? Now, when done a blind study, people can't tell. Right? So when they got a high-level player to play behind a curtain, and then they canvass people, is it a Stradivarius or is it a modern one? They couldn't tell the difference. Now, what if there is poetry already out there that has already been written by a machine that has been accredited to an apparent avatar or a human that you're enjoying, but you don't know yet? Is that possible?
I think that's a true test, isn't it?
I think that's a good point, though, isn't it? That's like a Turing test, isn't it? Poetry, isn't it? But I suppose the point you make there, though, is a good one, is that we put our perception onto the fact that one's human, so it's better. It's almost like it's
exactly,
artisan.
but it might not be true. You don't know.
Yeah. But even if it isn't true, we would still believe that it was better, wouldn't we? So I think robots could make music, but there might still be a premium put on for human-made music.
I see a gap in
live music and so on.
Yeah, I see a gap in the market for someone who would eventually produce a program that could make music that's indistinguishable from whatever people consider the best, and then have a fake human front it. So
I'd still need the fake human though to do the job of being the fake human. The job would be being a fake human
or a hologram.
I mean, I suppose the advantages of that is in terms of touring, they could be in many cities at once.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, here's a good thing as well. What if I told you could resurrect your favourite dead artist like Jimi Hendrix or Amy Winehouse or whatever, and there was an AI that could make brand new music just in line with it, right? But then, of course, there's no human available to go and see. But you could always go to a concert, like Greg was saying, and see like a holographic projection of Jimi Hendrix.
It's almost a new experience, isn't it?
That would be worth more for a lot of people than an actual real human, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be good, but you get, I suppose, it's still isn't the same as the human. No, it's not. It's still different. It's still not as good as it.
I don't think it's tiered to the ultimate being a human doing it. I think there'll be a point where we can't tell the difference. And we'll even be questioning whether people exist that we think are human, that we've never actually seen in the flesh before. That's right. I sincerely believe that, and it's only a matter of time.
I can see the difference. Like once
Talk about any Blade Runner.
Once technically, I've been watching too much Black Mirror now. But
I can't wait to show this to you in 10 years.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the point I was making, I suppose, is like people would choose to buy from. Like I suppose one of the things we were talking about the other day, wasn't it? It was like sandwiches. You can go to the supermarket. You can get your loaf of Warburton's bread. You can buy your pre-sliced cheese, and you can do that. And like that's been made in a factory. It's not handmade. It's going to cost you like pence to buy a sandwich. But then people don't buy that. They don't do that. And I know there's an element of convenience, but people still go and buy, like they still pay like £8 for a sandwich. We're in the Baltic Triangle in Liverpool, aren't we? Over the road to Baltic Market, and like you can pay £8 for a sandwich. It's not just convenience, because you can go to a supermarket and buy a supermarket sandwich for like £1.50, £2. People choose to pay a lot more because it's somehow artisanal. The bread's been
they're buying the experience,
sourdough, and it's an experience. I suppose that's a more wider point, isn't it? It's like experiences are already becoming more important than materialistic,
than the actual
ideas.
Product.
The product. It's the experience around the product, which goes back to what we were saying before about the restaurant. It's the experience of being in a restaurant.
Well, I think people will cynically take advantage of it, just like Greg's did when they did their artisanal bakery goods at that festival. And it was called, Gregoire and Gregoire or something. And they sold it for like £6, and it was really just one of the same ones as the Greg's one. And that ties into that people want to buy this lifestyle. It's a lifestyle choice to buy food, but
it doesn't matter that it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. But
that's the
it's the same with like Crochet as well. That's effectively a branch of McDonald's.
It's branding, isn't it? It's branding.
But it's the same. It's the same thing. So you go to McDonald's. But that's just like this automated horrible thing. I'll go to Pret a Manger and have this artisanal sandwich where they've literally got artisanal bread. But you're literally still giving money to the same people.
No, but I think like I'm saying, that comes back to branding, doesn't it? So things are branded to different markets, and like I suppose in the future, the branding around someone who's human, their brand of a human brand would be potentially be worth more than the individual.
Even if they weren't human.
Yeah, well, true. Okay, so moving on from future jobs, we're talking anything where there's anything creative, abstract, empathy involved. I think about experiences, and I think those jobs are only going to improve, increase in the future, aren't they? I think we're going to free up the time from hopefully the repetitive and the mundane jobs, and let people do things that are a bit more creative, a bit more thought behind them, and so on. I think that's probably a key sort of direction, isn't it? Like,
so there'll be more cottage industries.
Cottage industries. So a good example, like my brother, he makes wood turning, what do they call it? crochet hooks.
Oh,
He
does
does like giant knitting needles and giant crochet hooks, and like you can buy them in.
My wife sent me a picture of one yesterday.
Actually,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
but you can buy crochet hooks. You know,
Yeah.
they come from China and they're like £10 or whatever, and like, but people like literally sells them to like Italy. He's only got like a lathe in like some workspace down like just outside of Brighton and Worthing, and you know, people come to him because they want this product that, you know, is unique, it's novel, it's only he does it, and you know, he tells them like this is the right stuff to rub into it. He makes like the balm stuff that goes onto it, and you know, people still want that even though they can go and buy a mass-produced product.
People still like things, don't they, as well?
Yeah.
Like in the music industry, I suppose, you know, we've got the big streaming boom that's happened. We've all gone digital now, but the sales of vinyl are on the up.
It's true.
And it's the idea of having something physical. I think
Yeah.
there's still people out there who like things.
They also argue it sounds better as well.
Well, there's the
But
audio file.
make it.
And there's kind of like luxury items. Like if we're saying that everyone can have something that's luxury, it's no longer a luxury, is it? It's exactly. Scarcity is what brings luxury. So even if it is the best, so even if like you take a Rolex watch and it's the best, or you know some other like a Lamborghini car, and they're saying that that's one of the best cars. If everyone could have one, it's suddenly not the best, is it? You know, you look at things that have become a commodity over time, like phones and smartphones and so on.
Well,
like everyone's got
any music that you stream. I can listen to all the same music as you, anything. But it has to then be given that extra value by having it on vinyl, even in a piece of art, ostensibly inside.
So I think that would still continue, wouldn't it?
Because people need those signifiers of conspicuous consumption.
That
signify that they're part of a different strata of society.
Because I suppose like the point, like wealth's relative, isn't it? Or happiness is relative. You know, unfortunately, people are happy because they're happier than someone else, and that would still continue with automation. We wouldn't all just be sat at home doing nothing. We try and find ways to differentiate ourselves.
And it's very short-lived high as well. To buy something, no matter how expensive it is, if you bought a Lamborghini or whatever, it would only take a couple of days before that shopper's high just levels out. And then you need to buy something else. Really. So that's never going to change, is it?
No. So I think lots to think about in the future of work. So thank you everybody for listening to our first podcast about automation and the future of work. So we're going to carry on this theme next time, talking about how productivity can be improved in your business by introducing automation and some of the ways we've used automation to help businesses through using SwiftCase.
Be sure to subscribe below for future episodes of the SwiftCase Productivity Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SwiftCase UK. And you can find us all on LinkedIn. Just search our names. And head over to our website, swiftcase.co.uk, for a free demo of the software today.
And if you've got any comments about the subjects we talked about today, leave them below. Or if there's anything you want us to talk about in the next podcast, also leave them below.
Great. Okay, thanks. So hopefully see you next time on the SwiftCase Productivity Podcast.